PNM executive and national executive. And that is when we will then say, okay, we are beginning to move forward with a new executive. Not a new PNM by any stretch of the imagination. The PNM is not going to be new. It would be under new management. And we expect the new management to bring new styles, new programs, and bring something to the table.
Is it easier to do that while you're in opposition? To change things around in the party? You don't have the pressure of government on you.
It's never easy. When you're in government, people tend to cooperate with you more. That's a fact of life. But I think the commitment to seeing the PNM survive and prosper is there, both within and outside of the party. Even people who are not today rabid PNM supporters will admit that the PNM survival in our political environment is something good for the country. And to that extent, some people might be willing to assist in that survival process.
You have to basically broaden the appeal of the PNM at this point, don't you?
Well, not basically. It's
across racial lines and cultural lines.
That's raison d'etre. I mean, without the broadening of the base, we have accepted that we can't win an election with our base support alone. This country is not going to allow that to happen. There are a lot of people who we need to attract to our side of the ballot paper on election day, even if they don't come out to Balize House or come out to our public meetings. When they go to vote, we need to get them to choose us as against the other side. That's the PNM's objective. And to do that, we have to be able to appeal to them, connect with what they want connected with, treat with things the way they want to treat it with, and present policies and programs and attitudes that they find acceptable and want to identify with.
It's probably quite difficult to recruit right now since this government came into power with this kind of starry-eyed optimism amongst a large part of the population.
Surprisingly,
do you have to wait for that to sort of fade down a little bit?
We have a lot of people who are willing and coming forward, volunteering to take part in what they consider to be a rejuvenation of the PNM. So on one hand, yes, there are some people who don't want to be associated because they're afraid of victimization. But on the other hand, there are people who are volunteering because they want to see the PNM resurge.
Are there any parts of the PNM you want to change in terms of the vision of the party?
I would prefer not to answer that yet, but I'm saying that we are open to reviewing where we're at. We are comfortable that we are basically on the right track, and I'm sure there are some things that we may want to make adjustments to, largely because either they didn't work or were found to be unacceptable, or that the circumstances have changed, warranting an adjustment of our position. But I don't think it's going to be a major kind of shift of course.
No, in terms of the PNM, it's always been very good at looking at numbers and analysing situations. Have you done a post-mortem on the last couple, the local government election and the national election? To see what went wrong and why? That
is only now being done. It's being done. But in parallel with that, we have a 16-man team of arm's-length persons who were not involved, who mostly were not involved in the election campaigns of recent times. And such persons are now doing what we call a review of the PNM in the political environment of Trinidad and Tobago. They are due to report at the end of October. That report will be the basis of discussions in the month of November and early December. And what they say to us, including recommendations, will allow me to answer the question you asked before. And arising out of that, we'll be able to go to a convention soon after with some positions, either standing firm on everything or making some adjustments on some things, all with a view to making the PNM an organ that can treat more effectively with the electorate.
Would it be fair to say that the PNM was outmarketed for once in the last election? Because the People's Partnership deliberately put this figurehead, this sort of marketing campaign figure of Kamala Persad. It was Kamala everywhere. And Patrick Manning wasn't exactly the most saleable proposition at that point. Yet, I mean, people were talking about Patrick returning to office as the main campaign selling point.
These were decisions made by the marketers, and clearly they didn't work. So
you might want to change your agency, perhaps.
The answer to that is that has to be yes, that we didn't do our best. And when one does a post-mortem, we went in 2016, came out to 12. So clearly, we did not do anywhere near our best as to what was the basic cause for the actual vote. I think people vote for a variety of reasons, but there was one overriding factor that people were unhappy.
They were voting against as opposed to for.
There was a certain unhappiness in the electorate with the way things were going. And I think that's as much as I want to say at this time. And that unhappiness reflected itself at the polls.
And from a marketing perspective, Dr. Keith Rowley, what kind of product are you to sell in terms of appeal? Do you have the broad appeal for the public that you'd need to win an election?
You really want me to answer that?
Of course I do, yes.
Well, I would hope that I bring some acceptance and some acceptability to the electorate, and that I will so conduct the PNM's business in such a way that under my leadership, enough people will associate with the PNM's position to make the PNM a credible alternative to the current government, and then we fight it from there.
Do you think you being a maverick in the previous administration gives you a little extra appeal? The fact that you spoke out when you felt it was necessary to speak out?
Well, I don't know that I was a maverick.
Because nobody else was speaking out.
As I say,
or was anybody else speaking out? You were the only one.
As I say over and over, everything I did as a minister of government or as a backbencher was done against the background of an oath of office, which I took on many occasions, and that oath of office required me to do certain things. And I'm quite happy that I've done that. If other persons chose to ignore their oath of office, then that's a matter for them, and they will have to account to the electorate who elected them both locally at the constituency level and at national level. But I don't consider myself a maverick. What I wanted to see was that I did the best that I could for the organization and for the country. Unfortunately, in seeking to do that, the reaction to me were personal attacks, and I was forced to fight off personal attacks. I don't know if you're aware of this. At one time in my political life not too long ago, I had to fight off the Prime Minister, the Attorney General, the Integrity Commission, the Commissioner of Police, and DPP.
Well, I work on news, so I'm pretty aware of that, yeah. You were under siege.
All of that was meant to put me in a position that I will not be able to carry out my oath of office. Fortunately.
But you seemed unruffled by it, though, at the time.
Well, in the face of that, if you're nervous or panicked, then you're in the worst position to treat with it. And secondly, most importantly, I had nothing to be afraid of. The greatest fear I had is that there would be a miscarriage of justice where one of these institutions would have succeeded in using their office against me. And the Integrity Commission almost did that. I had to go to the court to prevent the Integrity Commission from putting me in a situation where I could have ended up like Frankie Khan and Eric Williams.
And you succeeded?
Well, fortunately, I succeeded. But what if I didn't succeed? You understand? So it was a complex situation for me. But I wasn't afraid to fight it because, I mean, I was brought up a certain way. And it's the only way I know it.
Well, you've been described as fearless, so that's hardly surprising.
Well, I'm not foolhardy. I don't want you to think that fearless there means foolhardy. There's fearless and there's powerful stupid. I understand what is right and what is wrong from my best perspective, and I will stand up for what I think is right and fair. And maybe sometimes in doing so you offend people or you influence situations against interests. But in the political arena, one cannot expect calm seas all the time. Politics is about interests, and interests sometimes tend to defend itself in a variety of ways. But in my own case, it all played out. What I'm very grateful for, it played out, all of it played out in full public view, so that I was able to be assessed by the population to whom these barbs were aimed. The persons who sought to damage me sought to do so as to influence the population. And my reaction and the treatment of all of this was in full public view. And that is why today, as leader of the PNM, I'm not going to spend much of my time going around saying who I am, because I had the opportunity to demonstrate who I am and what I represent at the individual level. And I have stood firm as a PNM standard bearer for 30 years.
And on that note, Dr. Rowley, thank you so much for being here. It's been a great pleasure hearing your views on a number of different matters. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You've been watching One on One. Join us again tomorrow for another edition.